What's up, friends? Welcome to SPDM TV. My name is Mike, part of the SPDM crew, and I watch a lot of TV. We talk about various TV topics, reviews, and general appreciation of TV past and new. You can follow me on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Serialized at MLHilty2452 to see what all I'm watching. This week, we are talking about Squid Game Season 2. I will tell you the real name that I call Squid Game Season 2 once we get to our spoiler talk. And I'm so happy to bring back my friend John, who I've been going through Cobra Kai with. And John reached out to me and was like, is anybody going to talk about Squid Game Season 2? Because I've got thoughts. And thankfully, I was like, yes, I'd love to talk to you about it. So here we are. So, John, welcome back to the show. How's it going?
Yeah, it's good to be here. Pretty excited to talk about this show because there's a few things I want to get off my chest, like you said, and yeah, definitely looking forward to what this show has to offer.
Yeah. So before we get into season 2, let's start all the way back. Give me your general thoughts about season 1. What'd you think when you watched it? What did you think of all the hype around it? Did you enjoy it? Just give me some general thoughts on season 1.
It's a weird one because I actually put myself off watching it for a long time because I kept hearing everybody say how great it was and how good it was, and I just remember looking at it and thinking, if it's just people like in a game, like a sort of fictitious sort of game show sort of thing, that doesn't look very interesting. And people just kept saying it, and everybody was watching it. So I'm like, I'm going to have to just watch it just so I can say I watched it. And I'm glad I did, actually, because I was pretty hooked, like pretty much from the start. There's a lot of good social commentary and ideas in there. And even though, I can't understand what they're saying, because I did watch the subtitled version, you really appreciate these performances from these actors. It's Korea have got some good actors. I think that probably can't find us very much work because they can't speak a word of English. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I definitely appreciate Netflix as a platform that it's found a kind of a worldwide audience with this kind of thing. So yeah, really enjoyed season 1, and I would say I was somewhat interested in what they did for season 2. It kind of felt to me like without that last like few minutes at the end of season 1, like that could almost have just been like a single season show. It almost didn't feel like it needed another season, but I also felt like it could use another season. It was definitely something I would have liked to have seen.
Right.
So yeah, I was fairly excited, I think.
Yeah. So I am actually right there with you. I put off watching it for a long time because I thought there's no way in hell this is as good as everyone's making it out to be. Because my perception of it, kind of similar to you, is okay, if this is just like the Hunger Games or Battle Royale, except with children's games, like okay, that's fine. But the thing that sets this apart is that social commentary, and also you really get to know some of these players. And that's true in the Hunger Games and Battle Royale as well, but it's I don't know, this one just felt maybe slightly different. And what I appreciated about this is not only the commentary, but like you said, the performances and the production values as well. That music is just, oh, it
The intro music actually gives me chills every time.
every time. And it sets up a very interesting world that we live in that is sort of being explored a little bit more in season 2, even though it kind of confused me a little bit more. But, and I think this show also represents two things for Netflix, and or one thing for Netflix and one thing for kind of like the general TV going audience. The first thing is Netflix is doing really well with Korean and Asian and just like shows around the world. And they know how they recognize when something is good, and they know how to market it and broadcast it. But the second thing is, from a TV standpoint, this also represents a trend out there where, hey, if a show's successful enough, if this was supposed to be a miniseries, which it feels like this was supposed to be one and done, a limited series.
Definitely
And
feels that way.
but then they tacked on that last part at the end to leave it wide open for potentially another part. And you're seeing this a lot with TV shows now. So it happened with this, it happened with Big Little Lies on Netflix. That felt like it was supposed to be one season because it maxed out all the stuff in the book, and then now they're going off book and kind of doing their own thing. Happened with Shogun as well. Shogun was supposed to be one and done, and then it was so wildly successful that people wanted more. So I get it. And this is a TV series that does feel ripe for a sequel, but whether or not it sticks the landing is to be determined. So let's get into it. Let's talk about Squid Game season 2. We'll use our Sif Pop general scale, and then we will also do spoiler-free talk at first. So, John, did you like it, love it, hate it, dislike it? It was just okay, or secret option 6, I guess? Is it incomplete?
Oh, I was going to say sort of high side of just okay, subject to maybe what happens next. So maybe incomplete, perhaps is the better thing to say there. So I'm glad you added that option in there.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe incomplete.
Yes, I'm very much in the it's incomplete. And we will get into that in spoiler talk, but give me some general thoughts. Just give me your general thoughts on Squid Game season 2.
So I actually wasn't really on board for what they were looked like they were doing from the trailer because it was like he's just in the game again. You know, I had this problem with the second Hunger Games film. It's just the same thing again, but what they actually did with the first couple of episodes actually was quite interesting. It was touching again on the sort of social commentary sort of thing. And I actually would have been more interested actually if what they had done is maybe focused on another character going into the game, perhaps, and maybe focusing on them and not knowing what they were doing. Having just as much of a being in the dark as Su Ying was in the first season. Maybe he was going to try and take a different approach, but at the same time, like Su Ying's added knowledge of the game once he got into that kind of added an interesting extra layer to it. I'm not sure really if the sort of line of action he takes based on his knowledge of the game and where it comes from is really what I would have done if I was in his situation. But I understand his sort of desperation in there because obviously things happen that mean he does get a little bit desperate there. But I actually feel like they focused on him being in the game a bit too much. It was maybe too much of like just the first season again. Obviously, they have different games this time around, so they have to do something a little bit different. But I think I actually would have been more interested in the stuff outside of the game if they'd focused on that a little bit more. You've got these guys on a boat later on that is actually really interesting. I thought that was pretty good what they were doing with them. Although, again, that's kind of an incomplete sort of thing. We're not quite sure what's entirely happening with that. But actually, I think what was interesting me the most was the first couple of episodes before he gets into the game. Actually, I think that was the part that was most interested in. The different games, this is perhaps where it's not got as much like appeal as it would do to a Korean audience. It doesn't have as much appeal to us because these are all children's games that they play in Korea. So they presumably Korean audiences all look at these games like, oh, that's something we play, but it's got like a much more serious kind of stakes to it. It's like life and death. Mm-hmm. So that element is perhaps wasted on us a little bit, but they were kind of interesting sort of things that they were doing, and I do find it kind of interesting that these innocent children's games are being given these life and death situations. It's giving this idea of what people will do when their life is on the line, like under even like the most straightforward or simple sort of circumstances. It's really kind of says a lot about society. And I suppose I can't really talk about the ending as of yet, but again, that lot of interesting thoughts about where they're going with that and what they did in the last couple of episodes. I definitely really gripped in the last couple of episodes, certainly with what they were doing there, which I probably shouldn't say just yet.
Yeah. So I agree with you that the first part was very captivating and very interesting. They bring back a character from season 1 that I didn't expect to come back, but boy, some of those parts were very tense. They were very interesting. I like them a lot. I like what they did with a lot of the characters from season 1 as well that are, still in the show. It was an interesting take. And one thing that I will say is that I think Netflix did a disservice by marketing this the way that they did, because I think if they had marketed this slightly differently, I think people would have maybe tempered their expectations a little bit more, because it's still great television. It's still great and compelling television, but I don't think Netflix did them any favors by just kind of dropping that, hey, season 2, season 3 is coming soon, and not without providing a little bit more context. Because I was thinking kind of similar to you, oh, it's just him in the game again, great. And then based on the timing of it, when we actually do get into the games, like, oh no, this is not what I think this is going to be at all. I like several of the new characters. There is one antagonist in particular that I'm like, Boy, you are a bad person, but I am loving this because he's so over the top and ridiculous. And then there's a couple other characters that, as they continue to form alliances, I did I did appreciate some of the newer characters as well. And one thing that I did like about this season from a thematic standpoint, this is talking a lot about the new generation of people and how they get into debt, specifically about things around like Bitcoin and how, the following
Yeah.
following advice and what someone in an older generation would do to help someone out in their family. There's two people in the game in particular that are connected in a very specific way that I thought that was a fascinating and interesting way to show that dichotomy between newer generations and older generations and the way that they kind of perceive money. And so there's a lot of good things to say there. And I hate to say it, with the world feeling like it's burning down and billionaires are just running everything, the show feels more relevant than ever. And I hate
Yeah,
that. It's
definitely topical.
it's sad. But I think that's what I appreciate about shows like this that have something to say in like right place, right time. Because I feel like the original Squid Game was right place, right time, and I feel like this one is also right place, right time too. But however, I do have some thoughts about structure. I have some thoughts about the ending, and I have some thoughts about how long some of this stuff takes. But let's just dive into it. Let's go ahead and start with spoiler talk. So this is your spoiler warning. If you do not want to hear spoilers, you have not seen Squid Game season 2, please, exercise all the caution when proceeding forward. 3, 2, 1. All right. Spoiler, it's time for spoiler talks. This is season 2, part 1. And I think that's the thing that kind of irks me the most. And John, you and I are going to go back and forth about various things that we want to talk about. And that's the first thing I want to talk about is that this season is incomplete because it feels like they had a season-long story and they just split it down the middle. And there's so many hanging threads and things that we haven't even explored yet. There's certain characters like I don't know why you're here. Like I don't know why we're following
Yeah,
you.
yeah. There's a few
And
of them like that.
so that's kind of my big hang up with this is that if Netflix had marketed this as season 2 part 1, I think I would have had a different perception of this as opposed to what they did, which is season 2 and season 3, because this is not season 2 and season 3. It is two parts. And Netflix in particular are the kings of season 6, part 1, 2, and 3. Looking at you, Cobra Kai, for example, or The Crown, or Bridgerton, or Emily in Paris. Like Emily in Paris does not need a part 1 and part 2, but here we are because that's what Netflix does. And I don't understand why they decided to do that.
Yeah, it's so obvious that this has just been split right down the middle. I don't think they even thought about how the final episode was going to end when they did that because we've had 3 of the 6 games. It's obviously the second part is going to be the 4th, 5th, and the 6th game. And I think another mistake Netflix made is they haven't really publicized season 3 as of yet. It says season 3 is coming in 2025, but after the end credits of the final episode. But I think a lot of people just clicked off after the final episode actually ended because I see a lot of people online like, what? That was the end of season 2? Like, when's season 3 coming out? What's going on? The people were really confused, and I saw a lot of people just saying online, "Oh, it's a cliffhanger." And it's like, I mean, I guess technically it is, but like it's not like an end game sort of. Not Endgame, Infinity War sort of end cliffhanger, where there is basically like a clear sort of story, and then there's just something a little unresolved at the end. It's just like they've just stopped the story halfway through. It's not really a cliffhanger. It's just there's more of the story clearly still to tell. That's wrong. I think. I don't think. I think even Cobra Kai sort of they've given the sort of balance of like cliffhangers in the parts that they've split up a lot better because the parts of that season do feel like individual stories at the same time. Whereas this is just half a story.
Yeah,
It's the first
that's
3 games.
yes, yes. And that's kind of where I differentiate between all the discourse around Infinity War and Endgame and this is that at least Infinity War was a complete story. It Thanos had a clear arc of what he wanted to accomplish, and then that's what he did. yes, I do concede that Endgame is very dependent on Infinity War, but Infinity War is not dependent on Endgame by any stretch of the imagination. And season three for Squid Game is very dependent on everything that happens in season two. It reminds me a lot of how some of these other movies have been splitting up, or like when they did split up part one and part two, and it felt clearly for like a money grab. So I'm looking at the Hunger Games Mockingjay movie. They split that right down the middle. It, the whole thing there was let's find PETA, and then that's it. So it felt a little bit more complete, but there's still a lot of hanging threads out there. With this, there's a lot of hanging threads, and I don't see any sense of a complete story anywhere here. There's not.
I mean, they're still in the middle of the battle, and I have no idea what's happened on the boat. Really, they sort of like cut away from that. And I kind of like forgot where we left off with that. I should have rewatched the ending to be sure. There, I still can't quite remember who's alive and who's not alive on the boat.
Yeah, I everything that happened on the boat fascinated me, but I also don't understand where they're going with it yet because so you have the boat captain who because he helped out some people. He's helping people try to find the island. But then the last episode, like is he working for people who run the games? Is he an agent? Like I don't understand what's going on there. And the way that they left that hanging, I didn't like that. And also they didn't put as much focus on it as I would have thought that they would have because yes, I get it. The games are the much more sexy part of this to focus on, but a lot is riding on everybody on that boat finding this island. So I'm not sure how they're going to incorporate that moving forward.
Yeah, very confusing what happened on there, which it's a shame really because I was actually kind of more interested in what was going on the boat. Obviously, the games are the kind of thing that everybody's come to see. I think I don't, a lot of fans actually are saying, they don't really like the first couple of episodes because it's before he gets into the game. But I really am fascinated in what they're doing with the boat. I think that's kind of the more interesting kind of like betrayal, sort of like backstabbing sort of thing that might be going on there, or where people's loyalty lie. I'm kind of more interested in seeing what they can do with that.
Yeah. Go ahead. What's something that you want to bring up and you want to get off your chest?
So it was interesting that the way the games or the way the things work in between the games this time around is a little different because they have like a mandatory vote this time about whether or not to continue, and they also put little stickers on people so like the whole time how that person voted. It's interesting because in the first season the players like had to really demand the votes, and it was only after the first game. Whereas this time it seems like it's mandatory. So I don't know. Perhaps they've found that people just always vote to continue. That big carrot of the piggy bank up in the ceiling is just too much for people to resist. And I guess that's another like good point about society. Is like how you keep thinking to yourself, okay, well, we'll just like have this one more game just for a little bit more cash, but there's always that carrot of like even more money if you continue, and people are just going to keep voting. And also this kind of idea, I thought like Sinu's team of like trying to just collect together all the people that wanted to stop the game. I thought they had a slightly sort of flawed logic in just assuming that everybody was just going to stay the way that they were. They weren't going to be swung the other way at all. I think a lot of them would have just voted to stop because they felt like other people were just going to vote to continue anyway. So they were thought, yeah, let's give the stop side more of a chance. Whereas if there's more of a chance of the stop side voting, I don't know, people think in sort of weird ways, especially under pressure when you know that your vote is going to be the decisive one when there aren't many of them left. So yeah, I thought it was interesting that I guess there's been a rule change since season one. I'm not quite sure why that wasn't part of season one otherwise. But yeah, another good little bit of social commentary there about the way people were just sort of saying, oh, come on, like one more game, even more money, and absolutely convinced that they were going to survive. It's so weird. And I think the game you see in the first episode that the recruiter plays with those homeless people, I think that's a good little allusion to that idea. I mean, looking at it logically, not being in the situation, you think to yourself, surely the bread is the obvious choice. What kind of chance do you have of winning any money on that scratch card at all? Whereas you're guaranteed some actual food if you get the bread. But I think in the situation, that temptation of a little bit of money when you're so desperate for money because you're homeless, I think a lot of people would choose the scratch card. And I think that is, it's like alluding to the idea of voting to continue in the actual game. I think that's really clever.
I think this season delves a little bit more into the idea of like gambling as like an addiction and how like so many different things in our lives just revolves around gambling of some type. So, for example, yes, you mentioned the recruiter. God, that scene with the homeless people just was frustrating to watch because it does seem so obvious of a choice. It's like pick the food, pick the food. But when you're that desperate and you are just clinging to like any prayer that you can that you're going to be able to potentially get get out of this situation. You're going to do what you can to do that. And just I love the symbolism of that piggy bank up in the sky and or up in that room so that everybody could see it because the whole mantra of these votes that happen is just one more game. Just one more game. And don't you think that's how like every addict of some type that's what they do, just one more. Just one more. And they think that they can just if they continue to eliminate people, then they'll potentially get more money. And everyone is just so delusional to the fact that, I'm risking my life and I'm potentially killing others, but hey, that's a lot of money. And I feel confident enough that I'm gonna be able to win it. And it's just crazy to me that just every like anybody who's like, yeah, just one more. And it's fascinating to look at the people who changed their mind with the votes. And you mentioned how that could potentially be a rule change. One thing that we didn't mention up top is there's a time jump here. A lot of time has passed between the events of season one and then like how long was
Oh, I think yeah, did he say like 3 years?
yeah. So, and
I've forgotten about that.
I don't know if these games are held every year. I don't know if this is like an Olympics thing where it's like every 3 years or so. But if it is an annual occurrence, potentially, then it would make sense that they would evolve the rules because maybe they do find that after like they enact this clause in the contract that says, hey, we need to stop the game. And every time the game stops after one, and then they all vote to come back. Maybe they're just like, oh, let's just add a new wrinkle to this to make it more interesting for the spectators, which is disgusting when you think about it. And I don't know, I think some of the rule changes were fascinating, and I didn't think I was going to be that compelled by the votes, but I was, and I did find those parts interesting and very tense.
Yeah, I do remember thinking when Su Ying first steps in the first vote, thinking to myself, like, what are the guards doing while this is going on? Like, is no one going to intervene?
Yeah.
Like, you can't like campaign when people have started voting. I think that's an actual political rule, is it not?
Mhm.
So yeah, I think once they got to about the third vote, I think the one of the square guards does actually say, no conferring, no talking, while we're voting. We don't want anybody like influencing people's votes. So,
Yeah.
but I was a bit confused why they just didn't do that in the first place.
Yeah, that was a little bit confusing, but a new interesting wrinkle and something that just pretty compelling stuff. And yeah, that's interesting. I want to talk about the first couple episodes
Yeah,
because so the first couple episodes, this picks up right after the events of season one. And he doesn't get on the plane to see his daughter. And then what he decides to do is that he uses his vast resources, which he keeps in this secluded hotel slash gun range slash training facility slash secret hideout. He keeps it on a bed, like not even like all this cash under the bed. It's just on this bed, this giant mountain of cash, which I found hilarious that he did that. And he's trying to do everything he can to find the recruiter and find out how to end this game. And I mentioned it before. I loved the scenes with the recruiter and how he is egging all these people on to see how desperate they are to get out of the circumstances they're in when it comes to debt. But I love how Yoon flips the script on him and says, "You're just you're just a dog taking orders from a master." And that game of Russian roulette that they played, look, it's pretty
So chill.
obvious the outcome of that is that if it's either neither of them are going to die or the recruiter has to die because
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you can't bring back Giyun and then kill him in episode 2 in a game, or that might have been episode 1 in a game of Russian roulette. But I thought that the search, like Giyun is treating all of this money like blood money. Like all these people are like, why don't you just go and have like a happy life? And it kind of also just showcases like, hey, getting money is not all that it's cracked up to be. So I really did appreciate that part of it as well.
Yeah, I think it is the end of episode 1, the roulette scene. But yeah, chilling sequence, and I also like how the recruiter just almost doesn't seem to care. I think he's convinced that he's just going to win, he's going to survive, or either that, or he just thinks of this as another game, and it doesn't like cross his mind that people are going to die.
Yeah, for sure. I will admit there's a small part of me that found it a little frustrating with how slow the first like how slowly it gets to the game. And that's when I knew that like something's amiss here because we don't even get to the games until episode like end of episode 2 and it doesn't really get going until episode 3.
Yeah,
And that's where I'm like Netflix kind of did a disservice because as most people were probably like just waiting for like the games to start. And granted, the first season, the games don't start instantly, but at least we don't have to wait until episode 3 in order to get
yeah. The
something going
first
with the game.
game is the end of episode 1 in the first season.
Yeah,
So yeah, the first it does start in the first episode.
yeah. But those that first episode where Yoon is just trying to find any evidence that he can use in order to track down this island and track down the people responsible for this game. I liked a lot of that. I like that he has kind of one-upped himself in terms of he's training to fight. He's doing a lot of interesting stuff there. So I did like all of that too. And I like how it kind of does feel organic the way that Giyun and I'm gonna butcher some of these names because the
Yeah,
police officer who obviously or not obviously but survives his gunshot at the end of season 1 and makes his way back to land. I like how they connect and I like how they're now working together.
yeah. It's an interesting twist that I thought that was quite clever. I also like that the people he's got like searching from it is it's a really like well thought out system that Su Ying's got going here. But I also like the ones that we focus on for a little bit. You can sort of almost see a little bit of the same kind of Squid Game style greed in their eyes about if we're the one that finds this recruiter, we get all the money. So
Yeah.
you can see that they're focusing in on like the carrot or the pot of gold that is finding the recruiter, and so they're maybe also thinking a little bit along those sort of lines as well. So maybe Su Ying's that's why he's put the money in there as like the sort of like temptation, and to ensure that everybody does their job. He sort of knows, having been in the game, just how people will do anything for money, I think.
Yeah. Jun Ho is the police officer. I'm going to butcher some of these names, so I apologize about that. But Jun Ho's inclusion in this presents a lot of fascinating paths forward because, again, that big reveal at the end of season 1 is that who's the leader of this particular, the leader of this game is not only a former winner, a frontman, but he is Inho is related to Jun Ho, the police officer. So that was interesting. And so Jun Ho has a lot of motivation as well to find this island so that he can figure out what exactly is happening there. And I love the parallel that you just outlined with kind of just greed begets greed at the end of the day, and how there is a bit of a Squid Game like thing here that all of these henchmen and just like there's money's no object, like it's just like I just want you to find them and whoever gets it wins like a crap load of money. And how excited everyone is when they're just in that room and they're just explaining what needs to be done and how everybody needs to provide proof that they're actually there. Like they have to, and they're searching for a long time as well. Like it feels like months go by until they actually get
Oh,
something.
I think it's like months over like a couple of years at
Yeah.
least. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of that stuff was really interesting. And I do appreciate just how, how the setup there, even if the setup doesn't exactly or doesn't exactly pay off. I want to talk about the new games. So the first game is Red Light, Green Light, and yeah, it feels like that's a classic. It's a way to start the game. I was not a huge fan of how the reason why some of the people started dying was because a bee caused somebody to flinch, and then that's when people started shooting. And hey, it is what it is. Shit happens like that. But then some of these other games that they were playing. So they played this like four game, like it's like they combined four games into one, into this like relay race style thing where you play four games, everybody's tied together, and the fascination there with finding the right people for the right thing. Because do you remember in season one when they had to come up with their team, and they found out it was tug of war, and they were like, oh shit, like we're at a huge disadvantage. And you see a similar strategy here because Giyun has that firsthand knowledge, like this could be tug of war, I don't know. And then when you find out it is like a relay race, where everybody's feet are tied together, it's like, oh, this is interesting. So I really like that. One thing I did not like though is that it seems like there were a couple moment or there I don't like how they would end the game, or I don't like how they would end the episode in the middle of a game. Like I don't understand what they were doing there. But
I
that's
mean, it's
that's
Netflix. You've got all the episodes available to you.
yeah,
Maybe they just didn't care. I
that
figure, if you want to keep going, you can just go to the next episode anyway.
that's true because that is particularly true of any TV show that's dropped all at once. Because if it's week to week, that would just be infuriating to
Yeah.
watch. But since it dropped all at once, there's that. So I thought that game was interesting, but the other game as well. I don't even know what any of these games are called either, but the game with like the giant carousel or the and that song is
Yeah.
just so eerie.
So
And
chilling in like a life and death situation, hearing something like that.
yeah, and
Weird.
then it's just a race to see who all can get into a room. And that game just also, like some of these other games, just exposes just the fundamental problem or the fundamental issues that some people have about their willingness to do whatever it takes to win this game. And I think that's what I appreciated about that final game. But yeah, I like the new games. I thought that they were interesting, and I'm so glad that they did not just rehash all the games again like Giyun thought.
That would have been way too much repetitiveness. I actually thought red light, green light. I realized, starting with the same game is an easy, quick way to eliminate a lot of people. I understand why they have to start with the same game. I actually thought it was a little bit too same in terms of the way things happen, because you have the same process of like, for a while nobody's eliminated and then one person's eliminated, and at first they're just like, what happened there? And then suddenly they realize that that person's actually been killed, and that's when it's sort of cotton on to like, oh my god, we're gonna die. That's kind of a bit too similar to the first season, because it's like they all just run for it again. But obviously Su Ying, using his knowledge that he's played this game before, trying to get as many people to the end as possible. That's kind of like another kind of interesting sort of like different twist to it again, which you have to do from like the second season, with the person having knowledge of it. A lot of people I've noticed actually are sort of questioning like why he doesn't get sort of like tagged as having moved, because while it's on red light, he's shouting with his mouth covered, but you can see his head moving. So I guess maybe that's just not enough movement to get eliminated. But yeah, it was kind of interesting to sort of see him trying to preserve as much life as he could, and sort of like for the most part like failing. Although I think more people probably survived that than would have done otherwise had he not like advised them on everything. The second game is kind of interesting because again, like obviously sort of very sort of trivial, sort of small children's games, and again, I like this idea that when you're in a life and death situation, suddenly these trivial little things like knocking a thing over with a stone seems so desperate and so important suddenly, because you're going to die if you don't get it.
Right.
Really interesting idea. I don't know what that game with the the little coloured stones where you have to catch them and turn your hand over. I don't really know what the rules are with that. I guess that's a common game in Korea. I was watching them play that, like, what are you actually supposed to do there? I'm going to have to look that up at some point and find out what that is. But yeah, the idea of like working as a team, not just with all playing each of the games and advising everybody, but also because you've got your feet tied together, you have to walk as one. Again, an interesting idea, a lot like the tug of war from the first season. And then the carousel one. If it would be me, my approach would have been, I think, to maybe like recruit together as many people as I can, and then just run to a door and then maybe yell from the door, "We need this many more people." But what they seem to do is they seem to like only run to the door when they had enough people. And I thought that was an odd approach, but I believe from what I've heard from people online, that is actually how you're supposed to play the game. It's it's an actual game in Korea. You're not supposed to go to the door until you have the right number of people. So that's interesting. And also this guy at the end, I guess, assuming that the rules are that the number is based on how many living people are in the room, because he kills someone in order to make sure they have the right number of people in there.
Yeah,
it's like that's again a very kind of interesting idea of what you will do in order to survive. It's kill or be killed, basically.
Right. Mingle is the game with the
Mingle,
carousel.
right? Yes.
So what makes that game so fascinating as well is that you see certain people like push other people away, or just try to throw people out of a lot of these rooms in order to try to get them secure and safe. And it's interesting to see how they're also officiating the game, because they've got cameras on all these rooms, and they're like, nope, you don't have all the people necessary for this, so you're eliminated. And yeah, it's just very, very chilling in that way. That again, that music just stuck with me for a long time. And just, yeah, that's one thing that I will always give this show props for, is the production values, because that facility is just beautifully made from a set design perspective, but then the music is just chilling and just really, really great. I want to talk about player one for a second, because this is the second year in a row where player one is a plant of some type.
Yeah.
And player one is the front man. I'm not sure what to make of this at all, because I get it. I'm sure the front man joins the game because he also has intimate knowledge of how these games work, but I also don't get what he's doing either. Like,
I guess we'll find out, but yeah, it was confusing at the end.
It was. I thought his relationship with Gyun was interesting, because I think they're connected in a lot more ways than one can expect. But I don't necessarily know why the front man was like participating in a lot of these plans, or I don't understand how the front man could have allowed for this rebellion that is happening, which we will get to that soon, to let it get as far as it did without just like completely squashing it. And I don't know.
So a lot happens before he shows up with the gun.
Yeah, I don't. It's all very confusing, and this is just another strike for the show that says like, no, this is incomplete. This is a season 2 part 1 where you split it right down the middle, because I don't know what to make of what the front man is doing here. Is he just trying to continue to steer the game? Has he had a change of heart? Is he going to have a Darth Vader moment where he, lifts up the real creator of this game, or this like new person who's in charge of the game, or like the person that he left in charge, and is he going to lift him and like throw him over the edge? Or I don't know. I don't know what's happening with the front man right now. I will admit, I thought some of the scenes were really great with him, like when like that one round of Mingle where he does kill that guy. Like, oh, this guy's serious for this, which is weird, because you'd think that if it was time to, or if he did potentially get eliminated from the games, they probably just would have done the same thing with him that they did with player one from season 1. Like, we're not going to we're going to make it seem like we killed you, but we're not going to.
Yeah, it would have been interesting if he'd been eliminated in the second game. How would they have done that? Does he have a bulletproof vest on or something? Maybe,
I don't know. It's
so
really
confusing.
Really interesting. Bring up something else that you wanted to talk about.
So this doesn't directly have to do with the show, but have you seen The Challenge?
I have not, but you could go ahead and talk freely about it.
Yeah, it's basically just a game show. It's just the games from season 1, but with actual people, and obviously they're not killed; they're just eliminated.
what's the point then?
Yeah, yeah.
That's not compelling television. But no, it's been on my list. And although I'm not a huge reality TV person, that was one where I was like, yeah, I want to watch that because that seems really interesting and a lot of
And
fun.
there's a just recently, Mr. Beast brought one out on Amazon Prime, which I have not seen, but I think that's basically the same idea. A lot of people don't like the fact that those shows exist. They think that goes against the show's message that they shouldn't be doing things like this. Basically, I'm not sure what to think of that. So, like, I sort of get what they're saying with that, but at the same time, they're not being killed.
No.
So is that much harm? I don't think there's as much money at stake either. And having watched the challenge, the people in it do not behave the way that the contestants in the fictitious Squid Game behave. They are not like at each other's throats trying to get everybody eliminated. So I don't know. I think it's fairly harmless, really.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree with that. I mean, for all those people who are like it dilutes the message. The only thing I could really say for people is get over it. Like the message is good enough to stand alone on itself. And as long as we live in a capitalistic society where Hollywood has to wants to make money and capitalize on trends, like stuff like this is always going to happen. So get over it, people. No, that's a good call out, and I do want to, and I'm wondering if they're going to continue to do more seasons of shows like The Challenge now that they're introducing new games in here. And I'm sure that there's a market of people who would participate in something like that. So I guess we'll see.
Seeing an actual version of Mingle, that could be kind of interesting. Seeing just how physical it gets, people fighting to get in. I would be interested to see that, actually.
Yeah. I want to talk about the character of Noelle. So they introduce a lot of interesting characters this season, and they introduce a lot of people, and the basic assumption is these are all people who are going to just eventually be in the game, except Noelle. Noelle is a soldier in the game. I have no idea why we're following her. Like I don't understand what's going on. And her story is, what's the nicest way to put this? It was pissing me off a lot because it's I don't see where it's going, and I don't see the purpose yet. And this is where season 3, season 2, part 2 better have some explanations as to why we are following this person. Yes, some of her backstory was interesting, where she's a North Korean defector. She's got a lot of stuff going on with her personal life, but she's a soldier and she's killing all these people and she's acting a little bit erratic. And as a female soldier in this group, she's subjected to misogyny, and she's subjected to threats of like sexual violence. And I don't understand why we're following her. Is she going to be an ally at some point for this pseudo rebellion? Is she the one that's actually in charge of the games now? I don't know. But
Do we even know what she's doing during the final battle?
no.
Is she
No.
there? No, I don't. Yeah, I was going to say I don't remember seeing her. I mean, presumably she survived.
I'm assuming she did, because otherwise, if she didn't, then she was a big nothing burger as a
Yeah.
character, and it makes me wonder why she was included in the first place. But her inclusion in this, I don't I don't get it. I'm hoping that there is some form of resolution, and if there's not, then what a waste of a actress and what a waste of a character.
I mean, it did answer one question that I had at season 1. Is do all the guards know what is really going on with this game, what the ultimate motive is? And the answer is clearly no. They're just there to work for whoever's in charge. They're employees, basically. We sort of see a little bit more behind the scenes of what their actual goal is, which is to harvest the people's organs. So it was just interesting to see a bit more behind the scenes stuff through her eyes, maybe understand what was going on. But yeah, that is definitely an incomplete story arc there, which again is the problem with this only being half a season.
Right. We should talk about the rebellion, right? Everything that kind of happened there. So go ahead, the floor is yours. What did you think of this rebellion and this firefight to overthrow the game and try to find the front man, which we all knew how this was going to go, but yeah, just give me your thoughts on that final battle sequence and just anything else that you wanted to
Yeah, definitely a gripping kind of sequence. It took a few interesting turns of different tactics that they were kind of use there. I kept thinking the whole time I just don't think you have the numbers here. I mean, they really have no idea just how many guards that they have on that island, because there must be a lot of them behind the scenes just keeping guard and everything, and probably a lot of them around the island to make sure nobody tries to escape. So yeah, he might have might have been better off like trying to do this like in an earlier game where we had more players on the players' side. But yeah, definitely an interesting kind of sequence. It's not really something I kind of expected. I kind of thought that there just wouldn't be like there would be enough like know-how in the guards and the people running the games that they would anticipate something like this. So it was definitely unexpected and definitely like had me pretty gripped the whole time it was going on. And it was also kind of interesting that because you couldn't see the guards' faces because they're wearing masks, you aren't quite sure are they scared or is this like something that they kind of just have to do that they're kind of expecting it. So it's kind of like an interesting idea of like the enemy in war. You're not fighting a person, you're just fighting a side, and in this case a mask. So that was interesting. I do remember when they went off and tried to take down the front man. I thought this is not going to work. Two of you against God knows how many guards that are going to be like up at the top of the. I mean, if there's enough guards on the floor, like in the ground sort of area where the beds are, there's going to be even more up at the top. So this is not going to work, guys. So yeah, definitely interesting. Had me gripped the whole time. Yeah, disappointing that we didn't really get to see how exactly it resolved things. But yeah, really interesting kind of sequence. And I wonder if maybe the whole show is going to end with something even bigger than that. So that's got me interested, definitely. But yeah, Su Ying's plan overall, I'm not sure if I can completely get behind it. I think maybe I think he was like not thinking about numbers enough there.
No, he most definitely was not, and that is frustrating to say the least. But I think some of the way that scene was shot was really great. I think some of the key players in here that were not just Gyun and his friend, which is that Junbai, I think, just his friend who we meet in season one, but he ends up in the games himself. I was heartbroken when he got killed, but also if they wanted to have something kind of stick a little bit, like and show like the real life consequences for it, like that's it. Because if there's a lot of new characters that are introduced here, and we'll get into that a little bit more coming up soon about some of these new characters. But if you're gonna kill someone and have it be effective, that's probably the one that
Yeah.
you have to do. And it just sucks because a good principled idea, but not great in terms of execution, especially with some of the character, like a pretty good amount of these characters don't know how to operate a gun, so they have to train them really quick against a military force like all these guards who probably at least know what they're doing, even if they are kids. So yeah, it's definitely ill-advised. I don't like how it just ended and it's like now we have to wait a little while. Yeah. So there's that. Let's talk about the new characters. Any new character in particular that kind of stood out to you?
Oh, definitely Thanos.
Oh, yes, very, very much so.
Yeah, different kind of antagonist that we had from the first season. I can't remember his name, but the guy in the first season was kind of just like, I don't care who's killed, just as long as I win. Wanting to sacrifice people just so he can get through the game and just tormenting people the whole time. Whereas Thanos kind of thinks that this is all just a lot of fun. Like he just sort of dances around when he's playing the game. I think he's like, this is just my game. We're all going to get behind me. I'm the king, sort of thing. Like not so much like a kind of evil sort of guy, just kind of like annoying, sort of insufferable, sort of like makes you want to see him die, even if he's not a particularly bad person in terms of the way he's doing it. So yeah, definitely a much more interesting kind of antagonist you got there.
Yeah, I found him hilarious, but then I also found him very sadistic at times as well. Like during the first game, when everybody is trying to survive, he's pushing people to get them to move, and
Yes,
he's
I forgot
doing it
that.
with such glee as well. It's very chilling. I think it was a mistake for them to potentially kill him off already because he gets stabbed, and I don't look, there's a chance that he could have survived that. Probably not a very good chance,
I
but
don't think.
if people can survive being sliced in half by a lightsaber, then maybe Thanos could survive being stabbed in the neck with a fork and being left to bleed for a very long period of time, right? That's logic, I guess, and Hollywoodization. But I think they made a mistake by potentially killing him off because he was a kind of represents like a different brand, and this is where again the generational gap comes into play because you have Thanos who he made his money and because he's a rapper, he is a social media star. You see a lot of people in here who are like more into like digital currency and social media, which I think that it was saying a lot of fascinating things about the current state of social media and the way that we make money by, selling ourselves as a brand. I thought that that was a lot of interesting stuff. But then with Thanos in particular, he lost a lot of his money through crypto schemes or crypto bad advice from crypto. And he's a drug addict as well. He brings ecstasy into the game and and he's relishing on the fame aspect here. Even like I don't say this word lightly because I get it for a lot of the people in this game they're at their wits end because they put themselves in debt. But a lot of these people are losers. They're absolute losers who, hedge their bets on like the wrong things and they're in debt because of their own choices. And the fact that Thanos is like still treating this like a social media experience and wanting to be the most popular or famous person here is not only disgusting, but also it's kind of hilarious as well. Like one of my favorite parts with Thanos is that when they're taking pictures of everybody, he gets like a group of people and he's like, "Oh, look at all the people that's surrounding me." And eventually they're like, "No, you can't do that." It's like, "Fine." So I don't know. I found Thanos to be compelling. He was hilarious, slightly annoying at times, but a good antagonist for this particular group of people.
Yeah, very anticlimactic. I thought the way that he died. That's really, really kind of surprised me, and I was disappointed. I don't think he would have survived something like that. It seemed a bit far fetched, but the fact that he dies sort of suddenly almost makes me sort of wonder that maybe that is what they're planning. Maybe they are planning to bring him back, but that seems very unlikely based on how he died, I think. But yeah, I totally agree that a lot of interesting sort of modern talk about society with that character, I think, is interesting.
So we have here we there's two sets of people who know each other, or three technically, who know each other outside the game. So the first one is Gyun and his friend Junbai, but then you have this cryptocurrency guru who he's a YouTuber who lost a lot of money as a result of crypto, and he ends up losing a bunch of people money, a bunch of people who are apparently in this game as well, who are seeking revenge. And he's one of those people who like kind of flips his vote every now and again. He's just like, yeah, let's keep playing so that I could try to win a little bit more money. But then you add in the ex-girlfriend angle, and she's pregnant as well.
Yeah, why would you go into something like that? I suppose she wouldn't have known when she went in that she was going to, there was a chance she was going to die. But once you know you're going to die, why would you want to continue if you're
Yeah,
pregnant?
yeah. As a parent, this her whole storyline terrifies me a lot,
Yeah.
but it also kind of goes to show the desperation that people have. And you're right, she didn't know that this was going to be a thing, and they're at the whims of democracy, quote unquote, where people can vote after every game if they want to stop. So she can control the way she votes. She can't control the way most other people vote. Yeah, I honestly I think if she just would have been like, I'm pregnant, most people would be like, yeah, we should probably stop. But she didn't.
Yeah, I was waiting for Su Yang to use that as like kind of his argument for why we need to stop. Look, there's a pregnant girl here. We need to get out of here.
Yeah,
But he didn't point that out at any point.
yeah.
It was frustrating.
I did appreciate the mother and son duo though as
Yeah.
well, because that represented kind of like a cultural difference and an age difference that I did appreciate because it goes to show that this mom is willing to enter these games to protect her son, and this son just is like, I'm just going to keep racking up this debt and keep it from you. And I don't know, it's just their inclusion in this game was fascinating to me, and I really liked it.
Yeah, it's really sort of tragic. Oddly enough, in the challenge, there is also a mother and son in that,
Hmm.
and they are paired up in the marble game. Really makes things really awkward. But yeah,
Where
that was a weird coincidence, actually.
and then the other new character here is Yoonju. I think that's her name. She is a transgender woman,
Ah, yes.
and former special forces soldier, which watching her teach all of these people how to operate a gun. I thought that part was cool, but the reason why she wants the money is she wants to get gender affirming surgery. It's like, oh, that's interesting wrinkle in all of this. Any thoughts on her character?
I mean, it's not an American show, so I'm not sure about this. I wonder if maybe it's a little bit of box ticking putting a trans character in there, which I'm not against, obviously, but I wonder if maybe her being trans isn't as much to do with the story as it is just to sort of, make people more aware of that kind of groups of people. But yeah, it was interesting that they were a very sort of strong kind of knowing kind of character about what to do with the teaching of the guns. Actually, that's something that you wouldn't normally see in a show like this. I think in you're so used to like seeing people like rebel in stories like this and just pick up a gun and just know how to use it. I kind of appreciated that, that they felt like they needed to make it clear that they had to be taught how to use it. And obviously she's in the military, so she would know. So they set that up ahead of time. So I thought that was a good little bit of a forward thinking by the writers there to have that happen. And yeah, she definitely was thinking on her feet a lot of the time about what to do in situations like the 5 people a game that they had, advising them on what to do there. And yeah, quite a sort of strong, knowing sort of character. I thought, I like what they did with her.
I tend to agree with you as well. Making a transgender character in this, I'm wondering if it's for awareness. I'm wondering because a part of me thinks that if it was more for awareness, maybe they should have cast a trans actress
Oh,
instead.
are they not trans, this actor?
I don't believe so. But yeah, I'm kind of wondering about that as well. I like you. I don't mind that they added a trans character into this, but yeah, it's interesting choice there.
The only thing I would say about that kind of argument is if they can't find a trans actor that sort of fits the role and is actually a good enough actor to be in the show, then what can you do? So
Yeah,
I'll take that with a grain of salt. Maybe they just couldn't find anyone that was trans that also fit the role. Okay.
there's only 2 other characters, and they're both newer characters that are introduced here. They're lighter characters. One is Daeho, who is the guy who says he's a Marine or a former Marine, and then during this battle or rebellion, you find out no, this guy's full of shit.
Yeah.
Not much to say there. He's he felt like he was going to be cannon fodder at some point, but that didn't happen because we're only 3 games into this. Well, I guess 3 games into it, and a gunfight between the guards and the players. And then the only other character that's new, kind of worth mentioning, this shaman character, the one who's saying like God's abandoned me, and like the super religious, the one that's like everyone's finding like super annoying, and I don't know what to make of her right now.
Yeah, I didn't really care for most of her scenes. Really, I was like, move on, please.
Yeah,
I don't have anything to say.
I would definitely agree with that. Anything else about season 2, part 1 that you wanted to talk about?
No, I think we pretty much said everything that I would have wanted to say. I don't remember there being quite so many exterior shots of the island in the first season. So did they do a bit more on location filming? Because it's definitely better if they did, because it definitely looks great from the outside.
I can assume that they probably got a lot more money for this than they
Yep.
did with season 1. So yeah, I'm assuming that there was probably a lot more location filming, and it probably helped that they may have filmed some of this during COVID, because remote island, not a whole lot of people around. Maybe get a chance to
Yeah,
make it a little bit more safe.
and gives you an idea of how kind of remote it is. And did you know there's also like dozens of islands off the coast of South Korea? So it actually makes sense that they would have been searching for ages trying to find this one.
Nope, didn't know that. So that's actually a cool wrinkle that I was not aware
kind
of.
of that's a good little detail there. And I also liked the twist with the tracking thing, where you see them send the drone up, and then you see an overhead shot of red light, green light, and you assume that's the shot coming from the dome, but actually it's just a shot in the show because they're actually on completely the wrong island. I thought that was clever.
I thought that was clever as well. I really enjoyed that, and just goes to show the production values of this are just off the charts, and I really like that. Do you have any predictions for how this thing is going to end?
I was thinking maybe Thanos was going to turn out to be alive, but now that I think about it again, how he died, I thought no, I don't think so. I thought I did have a prediction, and now it slips out of my head. Leo was she called the guard character? I think she might be a double agent. I think she might turn out to be bad.
Yeah.
I don't think she has anything like to do with up at the top of the game, but I think she has some bad motives. In reality, I think.
I would assume that that's probably the case, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see with that. As long as she gets some type of story slash resolution, I'll be curious to see what happens. My first initial prediction for this season was I thought that the front man in Ho was going to make a play to try and recruit Gyun to be the front man moving forward because the front or Inho is previous winner, and maybe he sees, maybe it's one of those things where he's being coerced into this somehow. Maybe kind of, I hate to use this parallel because I wasn't a huge fan of this movie, but I'm kind of looking at what happened in The Matrix Reloaded and how the architect is like, you are like the fifth, the one. And we're still going to destroy Zion and we're getting very good at it. So, all of this boils down to choice. And once I expose you to all of this, your choice is going to dictate your path moving forward. So that was kind of what I thought. And then Inho ended up getting in the game. And now I don't know what to think anymore.
There was this theory after season 1 that the reason he has red hair at the end is because he's going to go undercover as one of the guards. And then it was just that like one scene, and then he's flash forward and he doesn't have the red hair anymore. It was meaningless.
It makes you think, why even do it in the first place? Yeah. Maybe Lee Junjai was like, yeah, I want to try red hair for a little while. That's fine. I'll just go with this. I don't know. It's very interesting to say the least.
Also, it looked terrible.
It
was not a good look.
It was not a good look by any stretch of the imagination. Trying to think if I had any other predictions. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we're going to get any more of the games either. Because at this point, how on earth can you continue the games when there's just like active rebellion out there? Which makes me wonder, do they have a contingency plan for rebellion? Because I'd like to think for as long as these games have been going on, this is not the first group of people who has tried outright rebellion and trying to escape by force. But I don't know. We'll see, I guess.
I can see them like taking whoever survived into like a room and them just like giving them a proper talking to, like you're going to keep playing these games, and we're going to take like proper precautions now to make sure you don't rebel or something.
Yeah.
So I can. This seems like the sort of organization that would like force them to carry on playing no matter what.
Yeah, I would agree that that's definitely a thing. It kind of makes me wonder a little bit though, because we've reached kind of like a critical point in these games, and I don't see a path forward with how they can continue. Kind of, I hate to compare the two, but kind of like what happens at the end of Cobra Kai season 2, part 2. Yeah. Like, there's no way that you can continue this game like as constituted. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, but I don't see paths forward for this.
I mean, the difference is that death is just part of this game anyway. So yeah, we saw in season 1, like when somebody died, like in between the games, they just added more money to the piggy bank.
Yeah.
So maybe they will take them back to the room and thought, well, based on the number of people that died in the rebellion, here's the money.
Here's all the people who are left, right? So that prediction where the games are probably not going to continue is probably wrong, because they have made a big, not a big deal, but just somewhat of a thing to point out that like the red light, green light, the figure for that is getting a partner as well, a boy this time. So I don't know if that's going to come into play, but Netflix has teased that out, and that was the post-credit scene, and it's like, well, that's got to mean something, right? Because otherwise, why are you showing me this?
Yeah, true.
So
actually, reminded me of something else I was going to say, which isn't so much to do with season 2. It's just the show in general. Did you listen to the dubbed version at all?
I did.
Yeah. So like during the red light, green light thing, the doll just goes red light, green light. It doesn't have the little sing song thing. So it's like that ruins it for me. It just doesn't have the same kind of eerie feel to it without the little sing song.
Yeah, since I wrote the review for this for Sif Pop, check out my review. I needed to watch this pretty quick, And I, unfortunately, by my very nature, because I've got a lot of stuff going on, I tend to multitask, and I cannot pay attention to a show and do something else if the show is in a different language that I don't understand because I can't read the subtitles. So I've actually seen it twice. The first time I saw it, I watched the dub version, and then like the dub version of this is very distracting. It's because some of the dialogue
Voice.
is because this was a problem in season one as well. It's just the dub work is just rough to say the least. But then when I watch the sub version, I'm like, oh, I can get proper context in terms of what these actors are actually trying to say versus what the English dub version is trying to portray to me. So it's like for anyone out there who's like, oh, I can't watch things with subtitles. All I could say to them is like, get over it, just read it. Like it's so much of a better experience if you watch the sub version versus the dub version.
I mean, we read books, we read articles on websites and everything. Read subtitles.
But John, I just watch YouTube videos and I just watch, I don't watch a movie to read or I don't watch a TV show to read. Like, come on, people,
Yeah.
come on. Just watch the sub version, and the performances are just elevated a lot more when you're not as distracted by the dub version, because performances in this are still outstanding. Lee Junjai is just still fantastic in this, and some of the other performances are really good as well. But I still think Lee Junjai crushed it with the material he's given, and even if it is incomplete, I still appreciated what he was doing.
Yeah, great. And I'm saying this is a dyslexic as well. Definitely prefer to read the subtitles.
Well, there you go. You've just all the more of an endorsement for reading subtitles. John, anything else that you wanted to talk about before we wrap up?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything. I can't think of anything else I want to say.
Well, John, always great to talk to you and catch up to you, or catch up with you, and appreciate your time, especially considering we've had to reschedule this a bunch of different times because the internet sucks. And I appreciate you always sticking with me on these. John, do you have anything you want to plug? And where can the people find you if they want to keep up the conversation?
So you can find me on Instagram. It's John Tillyard 86. That's Tillyard, and then the numbers 86. I'm on Threads under the same username, and I write reviews for SIFPOP. I've lost 3 reviews, actually, have all been Disney related, but 1 or 2 Mufasa, The Lion King, and Dream Productions, which is a spin-off series of Inside Out, and a review that was posted on SIFPOP just yesterday as we were recording this, Back in Action, another Netflix movie with Cameron Diaz and Jamie Foxx. And my next review is going to be the final season of Cobra Kai, which is going to be on there next month.
And we're gonna talk about that when it comes up, because we'll see how that pans out. So greatly appreciate you jumping on. Check out John's articles on SIFPOP. They're great. So keep up with him there. And again, appreciate your time.
Okay, cheers.
That's going to do it for this episode of SPDM TV. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe to anything and everything SPDM Crew, wherever you get your podcast. Join us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, and Blue Skies, or Facebook, Instagram, X, Threads, YouTube, and Blue Sky at SPDM Crew. Check out our website at spdmcrew.com. Shout out to HiFlyer Creative Studios for making our awesome logo. Greatly appreciate their support. And if you have any marketing, brand standards, or logo needs, contact them at HiFlyerCreative.com. Check out our other shows on the network. We've got lots of other content available. We've got shows about movies, TV shows. We've got a couple music ones. We've just launched one that is about the readings of J.R.R. Tolkien. And then just check out our other shows. There's a lot of great stuff on here, and we've got more coming up. If you've got a podcast idea or you're interested in being part of the SPDM crew as a guest or collaborating, email us at spdmcrew@gmail.com. Until next time, happy watching, friends.